Good evening. I'm Ed Murrow. The name of the program is Person to Person. It's all live, there's no film. Tonight we began our fourth season of informal visits at home with people we hope you will find both pleasant and interesting. Also joining the Person to Person family this year is a new alternate week sponsor, Life magazine. This evening, we'll be going first to Beverly Hills, California, where Frank Sinatra is waiting for us. And then we'll move on to Walpole, Massachusetts, and the home of the attorney Joseph N. Welch. We'll be ready to go in exactly 30 seconds.
Once again in this new issue, Life takes you a step beyond the headlines with a remarkable report on the sunken Andrea Doria. Life sent these divers down 240 feet beneath the Atlantic to get the first color pictures taken inside the wrecked ship. You'll see them in this issue, as well as the delighted lady whose suitcase the divers retrieved. It's an exclusive story you'll see only in Life. Read Life every week.
Now back to Edward R. Murrow.
Frank Sinatra is, well, Frank Sinatra. In 20 years, he's traveled from Hoboken to Hollywood, with stops in between. The voice, or as Jimmy Durante once called him, Moonlight Sinatra, has become one of Hollywood's great stars. Recently, after a comparatively inactive period, Variety credited him with the greatest comeback in theater history. He's now one of Hollywood's hottest properties. This week, Frank Sinatra has two projects going at once, performing at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas and completing a new home in Beverly Hills. Tonight, Frank is seeing his finished two-bedroom Japanese modern house for the first time. It sits on a knoll in the Santa Monica Mountains, overlooking Coldwater Canyon.
You see a pair of laughing eyes.
Frank last saw the house a week ago without any furniture. But some time ago, he assured me it would be ready for a visit right now.
Sing along, boy, then snap.
Evening,
Those
Frank.
eyes, those eyes. How are you, Ed?
Good. Good luck in your new home, by the way.
Thank you very much, and welcome.
Tell me, have you been home long enough to make sure you have a place for everything and everything is in its place?
I have just been home long enough to change clothes and say hello to you and your wonderful audience and get in the car and drive to the airport and go right back up to the Sands in Vegas.
Tell me, Frank, what room are we in now?
Well, this is the combination dressing room, Ed, and bedroom with my unique-looking fireplace with the Chinese red. I'm sorry you can't see the colors.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I suppose you've seen many pictures of Mr. Roosevelt, but I have something that's rather interesting to say about this particular copy of it. I received this picture of the late president after he died, which was rather unusual, you might say, and I was told by Mr. Hannigan later that he thought it was one of the last times that he had ever signed a signature to anything, which is why I'm particularly fond of the picture.
You must prize that very highly.
I really do, Ed. And here are three pictures that I really prize. These are my three children. The little one is Tina. She's 8 years old, and she plays piano and saves money. The other kids call her money bags. And Frankie is 12 years old, and he also plays piano and makes lots of models of cars and airplanes. And this, of course, this pretty little girl is Nancy. She is 16 years old, and she also plays piano.
Frank,
You know, what is that, Ed?
just up above there, how come two Oscars?
Well, I'm sure that you remember, at least I hope you remember that this one was from the performance of Maggio and From Here to Eternity.
Yes.
And this one is something that happened in 1946. It's an award, it was a special award given to Frank Ross, who produced it, and Mervyn LeRoy directed it, and to myself. We did a short called The House I Live In, and the Academy bestowed a special award on all three of us. And of course, I'm very proud of this, too.
Well, Frank, I gather the night you won the Oscar for Eternity was the high spot in your professional career, wasn't it?
Well, it's one of the high spots. Ed, there've been several others, too. For instance, instance, Golden Arm. When I did Man with the Golden Arm, I think was one of the true high spots. And it was one of the difficult things to do, by the way, the From Here to Eternity role, because it was the first time I had ever done anything like that. And the other difficult thing I've had to do was to sing the national anthem in the Polo Grounds.
Why was that?
Well, you know, singing, when you do a ball game or a large outdoor gathering and you're asked to sing the national anthem, they put you at second base, and the orchestra's way out in center field somewhere. And it gets a little difficult after a while, because the notes that the orchestra plays are about, I don't know, a split second behind you, and it gets a little confusing after a while.
You know, I once saw a politician make a speech from second base, and the applause sort of hit him halfway through his following sentence, for the same reason, I imagine. Seriously, Frank...
That's what I meant.
What do you regard as the most satisfying thing you've done in all of your show business career?
Well, as I mentioned briefly a minute ago, Ed, I think, first of all, I must preface it by saying that I'm a real stickler for perfection in my work and in most other people's work, too. I find myself picking whatever I do apart, which I do believe is quite healthy. And I found that after seeing The Man with the Golden Arm, I was as contented with that performance as I've been with anything I've ever done in my life, and particularly in the professional world. It gave me a great satisfaction, really.
Well, so from Golden Arm, you had a great deal of satisfaction, but not the big award, is that right?
That's quite true. No, we didn't get the award for that, but you just reminded me. I got something to show you, speaking of awards. Come with me for a second.
Good.
This is an award, given me, but as a matter of fact, it'll be given to me tomorrow evening, officially, by the B'nai B'rith, the Al Jolson chapter, you might say. I'll have to eat a little more food to be able to lift this and put it somewhere.
What does the inscription say, Frank?
Well, it says, let's see if I can lift this thing. It says, the first Al Jolson Memorial Award, the entertainer of the era, Frank Sinatra, who by his deeds and talents most exemplifies the tradition of the great Al Jolson. I really shouldn't have read that. Somebody else should be doing that.
Well, I congratulate you in advance, Frank, of
Thank you very much. I think I better keep this house clean as long as it's new. I'd like to show you the kitchen, too, Ed.
I was wondering if you knew your way around these quarters yet.
Well, I had a fast rundown a minute ago. Watch those steps when you come down.
Right.
Here we are. Isn't this lovely?
That's the kitchen.
And here's where I do all my cooking and make the spaghetti and the sauce.
Uh-huh.
And the meatballs and all that great food. And it's the first time I've ever seen one of these. I mean, I'd never seen one in a home before. They're hanging refrigerators. And you'll notice what the houseboys have in there for me.
Yeah?
Keeping me fat all the time. And the rest of it is refrige. And these are our ovens. And I have a surprise for you. We have 2 pizzas here. You see that?
Oh, wonderful.
Isn't that beautiful? I wish you could join me in a bite.
So do I.
Sometime when you come out, we'll come out and have dinner. This, I imagine, is a cupboard of some kind. Oh, and I'm sure every household puts Christmas stuff in a closet like this. This, of course, is obviously because we came in and I haven't had a chance to put everything together. This, of course, would be the deep freeze.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Tell me, Frank, how will you handle things if you have a big dinner party?
Oh, well, I have plenty of help. I'll show you who they are. Boys, come on in. Mr. Morrow, this is Moya, who is from Luzon.
Good evening.
And this is Tom from Yamaguchi, Japan.
Good evening, Tom.
They're good boys, and they help me a great deal.
It's a wonderful kitchen they have to work in, too, isn't it?
They do.
Well, now, Frank, in the orderly progression of things, there has to be a place to devour whatever the cook prepares. Will you lead the way?
You mean the dining area?
Yes.
Sure. This way, Ed. Now here, for instance, is a place where we might be able to dine in warm evenings or have luncheon in the afternoons and have a view of the city. It's a beautiful night tonight, and you can see almost all of Beverly Hills.
Mm-hmm. Frank, when do you plan your first big dinner party or housewarming?
Actually, I haven't thought about it, Ed, because, as you've already said, this is the first time I've seen the house. I came in a couple of hours ago, and I don't know. I'll have to work out a date after I get settled down here.
Well, let's see. You're in Vegas now, and then where do you go?
And then I come back here to do a picture for Paramount called The Joker. It's the Joey Lewis story. And then I come back to go back to the Sands for Christmas and New Year's, and I go to Australia in January, and Copacabana in New York, and come back again and make another picture called Pal Joey for Columbia.
Well, you're pretty big in Australia, they tell me.
Oh, very large over there. Very large. It's a wonderful place, Ed. Have you ever been there?
No, I never have, unfortunately.
It's just great. The people are marvelous. The audiences are quite different, as a matter of fact. I had a feeling that they were like the Americans about 20 years ago. They're kind of up and climbing and very gregarious. Wonderful people.
Rather more spontaneous than American audiences now, would you say?
Just a trifle more, yes.
Frank, are you going to show us your dining room?
All right, I will. It's right in here. I'll have to get some muscles to move this around. Now, this is it in here, Ed. It may look a little dark to you, but this is black marble, and of course the walls are rather dark, and so the furniture's also finished in teak, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's very pretty, don't you?
I do indeed.
It's
very
lovely.
striking. Frank, I know you broke records on the stage at the Paramount in New York recently. Do you think there were many of your early day fans in that audience?
I don't know whether there were, Ed. There might have been. But I do know that I was terribly pleased and terribly proud because, well, it had that same spontaneity and that wonderful explosive thing that took place when I originally played there.
Well, it must be rather dull for you right now, just the two of us and 3,000 miles apart.
Well, I can take care of that in a minute because as long as I got one in an audience, I can take care of that immediately. You make me feel so young. You make me feel that spring has sprung. Are you suffering?
Yeah, save yourself, Frank. Save yourself.
I will.
I know you have 2 more shows to do in Las Vegas tonight, and you've got to get back there. But I've been noticing some of the paintings. Any original Sinatras about?
No, there aren't, Ed. I did some painting some time ago, but every time I painted something, I gave it away to one of my friends. I found they got a bigger kick out of it than I did. But I have some paintings by my friends. For instance, this one in particular is done by Noel Coward.
Oh, that's Jamaica, isn't it?
Yes, it's done in Jamaica on his property somewhere, and he sent it to me for Christmas. I think it's very lovely.
Very nice.
And here we have one of my favorite spots in the house. Look at that, it works too.
A spigot, no less.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
Very pretty. Now, I'd like to show you a mural, Ed, painted by a woman over at Pasadena. Her name is Mrs. Patton.
Well, it's Japanese, isn't it?
She's about 80 years old. It's very pretty. It has a lot of warm colors. It has orange and reds and yellows and greens. Real warm.
It's Japanese, isn't it, Frank?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's a Japanese print, you might say. And there's something I'm particularly proud of I'd like to show you right here. Now, if I can ever get checked out on this thing, I'll be able to get it off the ground. Now, this swings to all points of the room so that we can see it from every side.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Very nice.
This is a very physical house, you'll notice. I'm going to have to really get in shape to operate it. And this is our record space and 2 turntables. It's a wonderful set.
It's quite a setup, Frank.
Frank,
a few minutes ago, you were explaining your pride in winning the Eternity Oscar, your satisfaction in doing the Golden Arm. What do you consider the most difficult period you went through in show business?
Well, there was a very dark period in my career, about 1951, and thanks to a wonderful fellow named Bob Hope, very frankly, and there's no secret about it, I could hardly get myself a job in those days, and Mr. Hope gave me a spot to do in one of his television shows, one of the early 1-hour so-called extravaganzas. And he set me up so beautifully, and he arranged for me to have all the laughs, and it was just one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me. And obviously, the industry was watching me at the time to see whether or not I could come around again, so to speak, get off the canvas. And that was a very... Well, I have to leave you, Ed. That's my cue, because I got to catch the plane and go back to Vegas again. And, but don't you go away. Oh, I want to keep you entertained while you're here. Stick around here.
You know, that's the sort of thing Hope likes to do, isn't it?
See you around now.
Meets the goal.
Good night, Frank.
Goodbye, Ed.
Good
Make
night.
yourself at home.
Thanks a lot.
Someone
Bing Crosby, I think, singing. In just a moment, we'll take you for a visit with attorney Joseph Welch.
This man is a wealthy southern plantation owner. He does not want white children to go to school with Negro children. Nor does this man, a southern sharecropper, whose son helps harvest the tobacco crop side by side with young Negroes. Nor does this man, a southern white-collar worker, working alongside a Negro volunteer fireman. Because of the school riots I've read about lately, I've tended to think of all segregationists as violent people with hate in their hearts. But this week's Life magazine gives me a much broader picture, because here, Life reports on 5 quiet, gentle Southerners from different walks of life who share the same conviction that school integration would be bad for the South. Life shows you how these Southerners live, reveals their reasoning, their fears and emotions about integration. And Life also reports on the more extreme Southern views, Senator Eastland and Governor Talmadge violently opposing integration, editors Harding Carter and Ralph McGill representing the liberal Southern attitude. This helped me realize that there are many shades of Southern opinion that we don't read about in school riot stories. It's the third part of Life's series on segregation, an honest, impartial series that gives all sides a voice so you and I can base our opinions on the fullest understanding of the subject. I suggest you follow it each week in Life.
Now here's Ed Morrow.
For over 35 years, Joseph N. Welch practiced law in Boston, impressing courtroom friends as one of the sharpest and quietest trial lawyers they ever saw face a jury. Mr. Welch was and is in the habit of referring to himself as just a small-town lawyer. But 2.5 years ago, something happened to Mr. Welch. His face, his manner, his voice became known to millions who watched the Senate hearing on the Army-McCarthy dispute. For 8 weeks, television introduced to the nation Joseph Welch of Boston, and with this came a national recognition. Mr. Welch was born in Primgar, Iowa, 65 years ago. His father was a farmer. Joseph Welch worked his way through high school and college. He went to Harvard Law School on a scholarship, then decided to settle down in Boston. Mr. and Mrs. Welch raised their 2 sons in this 11-room, 150-year-old frame house. It's in Walpole, Massachusetts, about an hour by commuter train from his law offices in Boston. Good evening, Mr. Welch.
Good evening, Mr. Burrow.
Mr. Welch, what kind of a summer did you have?
Well, not quite the usual summer, and actually not too good, Mr. Morrow. Mrs. Welch, as you know, is ill, quite seriously so. She couldn't very well go anywhere, so I didn't either, and mostly we just stayed here.
Well, I'm awfully sorry to hear that. I hope you'll give her our respect, sir.
I shall indeed.
I hope she's feeling better tonight.
She's had a very good day, I think one of her happiest days, and she is much better.
Excellent. Mr. Welch, it's been quite some time since the fates and your own efforts carried you from what might be called quiet anonymity to national prominence. What has this meant to your professional life?
Well, of course, Mr. Morrow, it had to have an effect on my life, and it's had a very curious effect, a kind of effect in reverse. Many lawyers have said to me, Joe, it must be wonderful to have had $1 million worth of publicity. Well, now, curiously enough, that hasn't worked the way you'd think. My guess is that when people think about employing me, they either conclude that I'm so busy they couldn't see me, or if they succeeded in seeing me, that I must be so frightfully expensive that they couldn't afford me. And so, Mr. Morrow, they stay away in rather large quantities, and it could be that as I get older, I'll face complete unemployment.
Mr. Welch, what has been the effect of all this publicity in your own community in Walpole?
Oh, in this little town, I think it's quite wonderful. I go down to the square or to the town hall or anywhere you please. Everyone says hello to me. Once in a while, someone will shake hands. They mostly call me by my first name, and I really have a sense of belonging. Actually, when I came back from the hearings, my neighborhood did something for me that always has pleased me. You see this little box, Mr. Burrow? It's
Yes,
a
sir.
cigarette box, and it has some engraving on it. I'm very sure you can't see that. But I have so little grace and so much pride that I'm going to read it to you.
Good.
At the top it says in wonderful Latin, E pluribus unum, Joseph N. Welsh. And then they say in simple language, to the nation's acclaim, we add our love, July 4th, 1954. Well, that's a little extravagant, perhaps, but rather sweet, and I value it.
Well, Mr. Welch, has it all been sunshine?
Oh, no, you couldn't say it's all been sunshine. There have been some gloomy features. I have an enemy here and there, and once in a while I'm aware of that fact. But on the whole, my enemies either say nothing or pass me by, and doesn't hurt much that way.
What about your sons, Mr. Welch? What are they doing?
I have two sons, both engineers, curiously enough. One lives just down the hill. I can go out the back door and be in his back door. The other one lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and between them they have 7 children, all girls but one.
Well, Mr. Welch, you have a lot of house there for just 2 people. I would imagine at times you get a little lonesome, don't you?
Lonely may not be quite the word for it, but there's lots of house for Mrs. Welch and me, of course. And it's full of memories, and as I move around in it, I'm reminded of them. You may have noticed there are some ship models in the house. They're over every door, as a matter of fact. Well, they were made by my son Joe when he was in high school. First he made one, he came home and put it up over a door, then he made another and put it up over another door, and the first thing you know, we had them all around this room and they spilled out into other rooms. We even got one in the front hall. I guess that's probably his noblest one. You can see it's quite long, it's made of several different pieces, and it's a pretty fine model of a ship.
It's a lovely thing. Mr. Welch, you always appear in a courtroom or on television or anywhere else to be very relaxed. How do you manage it?
Well, Mr. Burrow, I don't know that I'm always quite as relaxed as you think I am. In my office, I think sometimes I'm found to be not relaxed at all. In courtrooms, not so relaxed. But at this lovely address, I'm always relaxed. I make it a point to be. What I do is to come home from the office, particularly on a weekend, and I have this big leather chair, was built sort of to fit me, got a stool in front of it. I get in it and I settle back and put my feet up and I reach for a book or a magazine, and I just am sweetly lazy and indolent, and I love it.
Well, Mr. Welch, I gather you're not terribly unhappy with events in your life during the last few years.
Mr. Morrow, how could anyone be unhappy at my age to find their life opening up in new fields with new faces and new friends and new adventures? It's just incredible that I should go on having more and more things to do and more fun. And sometimes I say that if I do have any more fun, I will some way have cheated fate itself.
Mr. Welch, how did you decide you wanted to be a lawyer in the first place?
Well, as you know, I was born on a farm in Iowa. My father and mother were rather poor. We weren't aware of that fact. It was kind of in the air to be ambitious. I remember always feeling something beckoning about the trains that I could hear, and I wished to get on them and go somewheres and become something. We moved to the county seat. There, lawsuits were tried. I saw judges and lawyers. And suddenly I just knew I had to be a lawyer, and that was that.
Well, Mr. Welch, I've heard tell that along with your experience in the courtroom, you've acquired some interest in weather conditions. May I have a simple answer, yes or no, sir?
Well, I guess the answer would be kind of yes. I think my interest is somewhat overstated. I do go in a little for thermometers in the house. There's one, I guess, or more in every room, a lot of them outdoors. One here as I go by, a good one off of a ship, of which I'm rather fond. In this room, one to show you outdoor temperatures and indoor temperatures. Here, something of which I'm quite proud, a set of weather instruments. Some lovely people gave me that. Here's the traditional barometer on the right. Here's in the center a dial showing the direction of the wind. Little light show showing the winds in the west tonight. Here's the velocity, 6 or 8 miles. Just a breeze, I'd say. Mornings I like to come down, look these over, form a judgment about the weather. But I then find there's no harm in looking at the U.S. weather report. That's often quite a help.
Mr. Welch, through the years, what has been your greatest satisfaction as a lawyer?
Well, Mr. Moore, I suppose the greatest satisfaction is to have a client come into you with what he thinks is a terrific problem. He's harassed and worried. The problem doesn't look quite so tough to you. You take it over. You start telling the client, don't be so frightened as you are. This will work out. And after a month or a couple of months or sometimes a shorter or longer period, you solve the whole thing. He's immensely relieved. His unhappiness is displaced by happiness. And he reaches the conclusion that the lawyer was kind of wonderful and kind of special. And you then have a client for life, and quite beyond that, you're apt to have a friend for life.
Well, Mr. Welch, I gather that after 37 years of courtroom battles, you still think kindly of people in general.
I do, Mr. Burrow. I can really say this. It seems to me that most people are honest and decent and kind, and if you treat them that way, as if you expect them to be honorable and honest and decent, they will pay you off in that kind. And if, however, you are suspicious and distrustful and look at them askance, they think then you wish to be paid off in the counterfeit coin of a fraud or a cheat, and they will pay you that way. So on the whole, if you look for good in people, it is my experience, sir, you will find it in immense quantities.
Well, Mr. Welch, sir, what advice do you give to youngsters who are contemplating the practice of law?
Well, I only say this to them, that it's a fascinating thing to do, that it presents infinite variety, durable satisfactions, and then one other very lovely thing, it's never boring.
Mr. Welch, thank you very much for letting us come and visit you tonight, and I would like to say again that I hope you will give our respects to Mrs. Welch, and we hope very much that she will be feeling better soon.
That I shall be happy to do.
Thank you, sir, very much indeed. Good night, Mr. Welch.
Good night.
Good night, sir. We'll be back in a moment.
This week, as always, you'll find certain pictures in life that are so unusual you have to look twice before you can believe your eyes. For example, you probably believe that all cats hate to get wet, that trees belong outside of the house, that there's only one efficient way to diaper a baby. Life's surprising pictures, along with its regular picture reports on the news and other serious subjects, make every issue fresh and interesting. Read Life every week.
Now back to Ed Murrow.
Next week, from Cape Elizabeth, Maine, actress Betty Davis and her husband, actor Gary Merrill, their first time together on television. And from Allenhurst, New Jersey, newsman Bob Considine and his family. Those are some of the people who made tonight's program possible. And now, from person to person, good night and good luck.
These are actual deposits scraped from an engine which was run on a well-known leaded gasoline. Now, this lead fouls the pistons, plugs, and valves, causing misfiring and wasted power. Only one premium motor fuel, clear white Amoco gas, is refined to satisfy the high-octane requirements of your car without lead. Thus, only Amoco gas delivers 100% power with no lead fouling guaranteed. The American Oil Company invites you to tune in again next week for Ed Murrow's Person to Person. Good night.